Hello, welcome to the next step in the stencil art making process. I'm going to just show you real quick about cutting out a transparency. I've changed my setup a little bit. If you watched my previous tutorial, I no longer use like a little cardboard thing. I got this cutting mat. It's self-healing, so you can cut on it all you want, and it sort of just comes back together. So you don't have to worry about previous cuts messing up your smooth lines. You can sort of see it's a little tough to tell the difference, especially if you're using a color that sort of matches the background. So I like just to take a sheet of computer paper and put it below, and that it just gives some good contrast. Another thing you might notice is when I printed this color out, I decided to go ahead and change it from the navy blue to red, just so that it's a little easier for me to see when I cut. That way I can be a little more precise. There's good contrast between the two colors. So I'm doing this all in one take, so you may hear me curse or do other horrible things. The big focus I want to talk about when I'm doing this is just good knife control, especially when you're doing these tiny little lines here. And I know I need to flip it upside down the way my camera is oriented to capture this. It doesn't work too well for me to... I guess I can do it upside down. I can do that. Is to do these little lines here. So the way I have it cut out is all of the dark blue will be cut ahead of time, and then I will be painting the navy blue over the top. So these little islands have to be separated by these, I guess, the lines in the hair. And so we have to be very careful when cutting them out. And this is where practicing is super important. See if I can do this without blocking the camera with my head. Okay. You want to try and do it in as smooth a motion as possible. You don't want to start and stop because you'll get weird little jagged edges. So just try and line it up. And you may need to move your piece around a bit so you get the right angle where you can see the line you're trying to trace. And just go nice and smooth. Take your time. Using a really sharp blade is helpful. In fact, I'm going to change this one real fast. Just kind of unscrew it. Get rid of it. Where's my other ones? Here they are. So these blades have a tiny little tip on them that sort of flexes around a whole bunch. And I don't like that. So what I always do when I put in a brand new blade is just kind of stick it down in my mat and kind of break that tip off. It just gives, I feel like I have a little bit better control if it doesn't wiggle around as much. So yeah, we're just going to keep tracing these lines. And just, I mean, everything about this is taking your time. One thing that you can do, print out a whole bunch of extra stencils when you're just starting out, just on standard computer paper, and just practice cutting with no intention of actually painting the final piece. You just, cutting is, the painting is the easy part. Cutting and making sure everything, all your stencils are proper, is one of the harder parts of doing the ponies, or any stencil art for that matter. Let's see, I went a little too much on that one, but that's okay. We can come back the other way and clean it out. It's always better to cut a little bit to the inside of the color that you're trying to get, because you can come back and clean it up later. It is much more difficult if I were to cut very deeply into one of these lines to try and fix it. You can fix them. I have patched stencils before with clear mailing tape, and yeah, just some clear mailing tape, and then cutting very carefully with the knife around it. I'm going to I'm going to do this front part of the hair and then stop recording for the tail, just because it's more of the same. It's more of the same. And if you've seen, I don't know, my previous video talking about cutting out with the Fluttershy piece, or if you've seen my sort of fast music music-backed derpy video, you'll have a pretty good idea of how I cut this. And everybody cuts a little bit different. The tutorial is just how I've sort of come to do the work in the couple of months since I've started doing it. And I know other people take ideas that I have, start changing them up for whatever works best for them, and that's perfect. Don't need to worry about that. Okay, I guess I could talk a little bit about the transparencies. I got the idea for using transparencies originally from Mutke. He has a machine or something that helps him cut his stencils, and he'd use this clear plastic just because it's like, man, I can line this up really easily. I was like, hey, that's a great idea. I don't have the same machine. In fact, I quite like cutting stencils. It's one of the reasons I do this. It's kind of neat just to watch it all come together. But I started looking into transparency sheets, and I went to school back in the day when teachers had overhead projectors and had to get transparencies for everything. But I always just knew them as the clear sheets that you would draw on with overhead markers. So I started looking and found that obviously, if you're doing like presentation notes or something, you don't write them all on ahead of time. You could print them out. And so I found that they offer a bunch of different options. They have inkjet, which is what I use, and laserjet transparencies. I've never used I know they exist, but I've never used a color laserjet, so I just go with inkjet. I just get them on Amazon. If you just search inkjet transparencies, you can find them. And I absolutely love them. They last forever. I mean, you could use a whole bunch. You could make one stencil and use it a ton of times, and it's pretty nice. The other reason I really like it is it is so easy to line stuff up. I mean, one of the biggest mistakes I'd always make when using adventure paper is just not having something just the tiniest little bit off, and then if that little thing is off and you use it, if that piece is off and you use that to line up the next piece, and then that's a little bit off, you just get this drift, and eventually, I don't know, like the final eye may be, ½ inch off place, and that, it may not be noticeable to some people, but I'm kind of super critical of the work that I do, and I like everything to be as perfect as I can make it. And so the transparencies just for getting everything lined up is just really awesome. You do have to think about, if you're doing multiple multiple sprays of the same stencil, how you want to protect your lineup line. So like if I'm painting the hair, like making sure that this blue, it's a little hard to see, like making sure that this blue stays uncovered with paint so that I can use it to line up later. You can use tape or, I don't know, something else. But, I mean, that's something that you sort of can figure out for yourself. So cutting them is a little more difficult than cutting paper or cutting the adventure paper that I used before, just because of the thickness. I mean, I don't know. I mean, well, you should know like what a standard sheet of paper is. And this is, it's pretty thin too, but it's just a more sturdy material. So you're going to burn through blades a little bit quicker. So it's probably worthwhile, if you're going to invest in doing transparency stencils, to purchase a box of X-Acto blades. This is like a 100 count. I'm not even halfway through them, and I think you can get them on Amazon for like $20 for 100 blades, which is pretty great. And so you just, I don't know, I kind of like cutting the transparencies a lot more because they don't tear, like, at all. Paper you can tear, but this one you don't have to worry about it. You just apply a nice smooth pressure, and everything just sort of comes up. If you don't apply the right amount of pressure, you'll get it where it sort of sticks. There's like the tiniest little bit left holding it together, And if that happens, I just retrace over my line. The blade sort of drops into the little channel that you cut earlier, and it's pretty easy to keep it in there. Again, like with the adventure paper, I find angling the blade instead of just going straight down provides a smoother cut. Sometimes I do go straight down, but especially if I'm doing a curve, I like, and you got to be very careful when you're coming up to those little lines that we cut earlier, just so you don't cut them. But if I'm doing a curve, I especially like to angle the blade, just to get as smooth of a transition as possible. So let's see if this piece comes out okay. So yeah, your corners might stick a little bit. You can go ahead and just kind of pop them up. It doesn't. Oh, it didn't cut the top. Ha ha. It's not a big deal. Okay, so inkjet transparencies. You have a bunch of different options. I use, let's see if I've got a box around here somewhere. I do. Sparko transparency film. This is the one I get on Amazon. I think it's, what is it, 50 sheets for $20, $25. So they're definitely more expensive. I don't have a picture here. I'll have a link to it in the text part of this tutorial for other transparencies. There is who makes it? I can't for the life of me remember at this point. There is another group, though, Cold Snow maybe, that makes it. Maybe that's where I buy them from. Anyway, 11 by 17 transparencies, which is a tabloid size. You'll need a wide format printer for. They also make 12 by 12. So those are a lot more expensive, but you don't want to use them. You don't need to use them as much because you just plan out and say, oh, okay, I need to use the bigger transparencies for these layers because they're significantly large, but then not for these other ones. So you just try and ration those pieces as best you can. Clean that up just a little bit. When you start if you haven't used transparencies before and you want to start using them, just like anything else, it's worthwhile to just print up a couple that before you start your big project that you have planned. Just make something simple real fast and get used to cutting the transparencies so that you don't waste a lot of them when you're cutting out like really detailed pieces and things like that. Let's see, what else about transparencies? Oh, see, and I cut that little piece. But that's okay, because we'll be able to hold it down later when we start painting. Cool. Oh yeah, transparencies can be a little weird when you're working with them. So what I always like to do is I number my stencils. This one is like number 4. One, it's just easier that way I can pick them out of a line of stencils because they're all clear and I set them on my carpet. Also that, if it's upside down, that doesn't look right. So I immediately know that the stencil's facing the wrong way. Let's see, this is the last little bit for me to cut here. Okay, so that's it. So now that's, oh no, damn it. Man, I gotta be really careful. In fact, I'm going to find my clear tape. There it is. Once. Alright, I'm going to show you how to patch this stencil because I need to fix this. So what I do is I've just got clear mailing tape. Take a little bit. Cut it in half. Stick that up there. Okay, flip the stencil over. Move the paper for this step. reinforce the bottom, and wind up. Okay. So now there's a lot of, you got to be very careful when you're dealing with these tiny little lines. They will want to jump around and break, but you don't want to let them do that. So now we're going to seal them on the top, and then we get to recut out those areas that are now filled in with the tape. But that's pretty easy. It's a little easier than the initial cut. Okay, so yeah, there you go. So now I get to cut out all this extra excess tape. Back to the sheet. Just sort of get the bulk out of it out of the way. Just with your first couple of cuts. Then what you can do is, there's going to be some that you missed, and I'm sorry you really can't see it. You just kind of hold the sheet up. Make sure this is sealed really well. Just kind of rub it with the end of my knife here. So once you've got the bulk of the tape cut away, you can lift the stencil up and shave the last little bit just with gentle strokes. I'm gonna get this mostly cleaned up and then finish it up off camera, just because it may take a little bit longer and you don't want to hear me just keep babbling on about this. Yep. There we go. Cool. Alright, so best lesson from this is try not to make the mistake in the first place so that you don't have to try and fix it, because fixing it is always more difficult than doing it properly in the first place. So that's pretty much it for this one. I'm going to finish cutting these out. I'm going to finish cleaning this one up and do the tail, and I will have another video as I start painting. I'm not going to show you spraying down the background of the canvas, just because, I mean, it's just spraying down. I'm going with a blue background on this one. It's just going to be just psh, 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 done. You don't need to see that. But I will do all the steps of getting the stencil adhesive on there and spraying and showing you how little paint I use. And yeah, I should be finished cutting these out today and maybe even start painting a little bit later this evening. Okay, and that's it for this one.